We live in a world obsessed with passion. We tell young people to find your passion. We tell professionals to follow your passion. And we tell organizations to hire for passion. And yet, despite all this passion, people are exhausted, burned out, disconnected, surrounded by activity, achievement, and progress, yet quietly asking themselves, why does this feel so empty? Here is the uncomfortable truth. Passion is not the solution we think it is. Passion without direction is chaos. Passion without purpose burns hot and fast and then fades. What people are really searching for is not passion. They are searching for direction. They are searching for meaning. They are searching for a reason to wake up in the morning that goes beyond paying bills, hitting targets, or keeping up appearances. Success has become measurable, but fulfillment has not. We celebrate growth, but we ignore cost. We reward speed, but we punish depth. We have built systems that are incredibly efficient at producing results and remarkably poor at producing human well-being. And so we find ourselves in a strange place as a society, more connected than ever, yet lonely than ever, more informed than ever, yet more uncertain about what truly matters. Burnout is not a personal failure. It is a systemic signal. It is what happens when people are asked to give endlessly to something they do not believe in. Disconnection is not a lack of communication. It is a lack of shared purpose. When people do not know why they are doing what they are doing, motivation becomes fragile, trust erodes, and fear fills the gap. Fear-based leadership thrives in environments without purpose. When leaders do not know why they exist beyond quarterly results, they resort to control. They manage behavior instead of inspiring belief. They push harder instead of listening deeper. And yes, fear works for a while. It can drive compliance. It can create short-term spikes in performance. But it also destroys loyalty, creativity, and resilience. Fear tells people to protect themselves, not each other. And organizations built on fear eventually collapse under their own weight. Direction changes everything. When people understand why they do what they do, sacrifice makes sense. Hard work feels meaningful. Even struggle feels worthwhile. Direction is what turns a job into a cause, a company into a community, and leadership into service. The most trusted leaders, the most resilient organizations, and the most impactful movements do not start with what they do. They start with why they exist. Their decisions are guided by a clear belief about the world they want to build. Profit, metrics, and outcomes are not ignored, but they are not the point. They are the result of doing the right things for the right reasons, consistently, over time. This is where modern systems fail. We design policies, technologies, and institutions optimized for efficiency, not humanity. We reward leaders who deliver numbers, even if they leave broken cultures behind. We scale faster than we reflect. We extract value without asking who pays the price. And then we act surprised when trust disappears and inequality widens. Human-centered leadership is not soft. It is disciplined. It requires courage to prioritize people when pressure demands shortcuts. It requires patience to think long-term in a world addicted to immediacy. It requires humility to admit that leadership is not about being in charge, but about taking responsibility for those in your care. Direction does not eliminate difficulty. It gives difficulty meaning. It does not promise comfort. It promises clarity. And clarity creates confidence, not the loud, arrogant kind, but the quiet confidence that allows people to take risks, tell the truth, and support one another, even when things get hard. Every one of us is a leader, whether we hold a title or not. Leadership is not about authority, it is about influence. And influence begins with understanding why you do what you do, not the slogan, not the marketing line. The real reason, the belief that shapes your choices when no one is watching. When individuals reconnect with their why, they stop chasing validation and start building contribution. When organizations reconnect with their why, trust grows, innovation flourishes, and people show up not because they have to, but because they want to. When societies reconnect with their why, progress becomes inclusive and success becomes shared. So the question is not, what do I want to achieve? The deeper question is, who do I want to serve? And what problem am I willing to commit my life to solving? Because direction is not found in excitement. It is found in responsibility. It is found in choosing to serve something bigger than yourself, your team, your community, your values, the next generation. This is the call of our time. To slow down enough to remember why we started, to design systems that protect human dignity, to lead with empathy, act with integrity, and think beyond the next result. To replace fear with trust, extraction with service, and short-term wins with long-term impact. You do not need more passion. You need a compass. You need a belief strong enough to guide you when motivation fades and conditions change. And when enough people choose direction over distraction, purpose over pressure, and service over ego, we do more than succeed. We build something that lasts. Passion without direction does not sustain people. It consumes them. It burns bright in the beginning, fueled by excitement, ambition, and the promise of something better. But without a clear sense of purpose, that fire slowly turns destructive. Many people mistake intensity for meaning. They work longer hours, chase bigger goals, and push themselves harder, believing that passion alone will carry them through. At first, it feels energizing. There is momentum, praise, a sense of movement. But movement without direction is not progress. It is motion, circles, and eventually exhaustion replaces enthusiasm. Burnout does not happen because people care too much. It happens because they care deeply about something that no longer makes sense to them. When individuals cannot clearly articulate why their effort matters, every obstacle feels heavier. Every sacrifice feels personal. Without direction, passion becomes a demand rather than a choice. People keep going not because they believe in the outcome, but because stopping feels like failure. Over time, this erodes motivation, confidence, and even identity. The question quietly shifts from how far can I go to how much longer can I endure. Modern culture glorifies hustle and intensity while neglecting meaning. We celebrate those who work nonstop, who sacrifice balance, health, and relationships in the name of ambition. Yet we rarely ask what all that effort is actually in service of. Passion is treated as an endless resource, something people should simply summon on command. But passion is emotional energy, and emotional energy requires purpose to be sustainable. Without direction, passion becomes pressure. People feel guilty for slowing down, ashamed for questioning their path, and fearful of losing momentum, even when that momentum is carrying them somewhere they do not want to be. Direction changes the experience of effort. When people know why they are doing what they are doing, hard work feels intentional rather than draining. Long hours feel temporary rather than endless. Even setbacks feel instructive rather than defeating. Direction provides context, and context gives meaning to struggle. Without it, effort feels like extraction. People give and give, but nothing refills them because they are disconnected from the larger reason their work exists. This is not just a personal issue, it is organizational and societal. Many systems are built to extract passion without providing direction. Employees are told to be motivated, engaged, and committed, yet they are rarely told what the organization truly stands for beyond profit and performance metrics. When results become the only measure of success, people are reduced to tools for achieving outcomes. Passion is encouraged only as long as it increases productivity. When people burn out, the system replaces them and calls it resilience. Leaders often confuse passion with loyalty. They believe that if people are excited enough, they will tolerate poor culture, unclear strategy, and constant pressure. But excitement fades quickly in environments where trust is low and purpose is vague. People do not disengage because they lack ambition. They disengage because they no longer see how their effort contributes to something meaningful. Direction builds trust because it gives people a reason to believe that their sacrifices matter. Fulfillment does not come from how intensely we work, but from how aligned we are with what we work toward. Passion can start the journey, but direction is what allows people to continue without losing themselves. Without direction, people tie their self-worth to outcomes they cannot fully control. Wins feel temporary, and losses feel devastating. With direction, identity is rooted in values and contribution rather than constant achievement. Burnout is often framed as a need for rest, and rest is important. But rest alone does not solve the problem. People do not burn out because they are tired. They burn out because they are tired of not knowing why they are tired. Direction restores energy because it reconnects effort to meaning. It reminds people that they are not just producing results, but contributing to something that matters beyond themselves. When individuals rediscover direction, their relationship with work changes. They stop chasing every opportunity and start choosing intentionally. They learn to say no without guilt because they understand what they are saying yes to. Their passion becomes focused rather than scattered, steady rather than frantic. Instead of burning themselves out trying to prove their worth, they invest their energy in work that reflects who they are and what they believe. And that alignment creates a sense of fulfillment that does not depend on constant validation or external reward, but on the quiet confidence that their effort is moving in a direction that makes sense to them. Burnout is often treated as a personal flaw, a lack of resilience, discipline, or mental toughness. People are told to manage their stress better, to meditate more, to sleep earlier, or to build stronger routines, as if exhaustion is simply the result of poor self-control. This framing is convenient because it shifts responsibility away from the systems that create the pressure and places it squarely on the individual. But burnout does not originate inside people. It emerges from environments that demand constant output without providing meaning, safety, or trust. When systems are built without a clear purpose, people are left to manufacture motivation on their own. They are expected to care deeply about goals they had no role in shaping and to commit fully to outcomes they do not believe in. Over time, this creates a quiet conflict between effort and meaning. People work harder, not because they are inspired, but because they are afraid of falling behind, being replaced, or losing their sense of worth. Fear becomes the primary motivator, and fear is an unsustainable fuel. Purposeless systems measure success narrowly. They prioritize speed over sustainability, results over relationships, and short-term gains over long-term health. In these environments, people are valued for what they produce rather than who they are. The human being becomes secondary to the metric. When pressure increases, empathy is often the first thing to disappear. Leaders push for more without asking what it costs. Policies are optimized for efficiency, not humanity. Over time, people internalize the message that rest is weakness and boundaries are liabilities. Burnout thrives where people lack control, clarity, and connection. When expectations constantly shift without explanation, when effort is invisible and appreciation is rare, when decisions are made far away from those who bear their consequences, stress accumulates. People begin to feel powerless. They stop bringing their full selves to work, not because they do not care, but because caring has become risky. Emotional withdrawal becomes a survival strategy. Blaming individuals for burnout ignores the structural design of modern work. It ignores workloads that exceed human limits, cultures that reward availability over effectiveness, and leadership models that equate pressure with performance. Telling people to be more resilient in a broken system is like telling someone to breathe better in a burning building. The problem is not the lungs. It is the environment. Systems without purpose also lack coherence. When there is no shared why, priorities conflict, and people are pulled in multiple directions at once. They are asked to move fast, but also be careful, to innovate, but not fail, to collaborate, but compete. This cognitive dissonance is exhausting. Without a clear guiding belief, every decision becomes stressful because there is no stable framework for judgment. People expend enormous mental energy simply trying to understand what is expected of them. Purpose provides alignment. It tells people how to make decisions when trade-offs arise. It helps them understand which sacrifices are worth making and which are not. In its absence, people are left guessing, and constant guessing leads to chronic stress. Over time, this stress erodes motivation, creativity, and trust. People do not stop working because they are lazy. They stop caring because the system has taught them that their care will not be protected. Burnout also reveals a breakdown in leadership. Leaders who do not know why their organization exists beyond performance targets cannot offer stability in times of pressure. They react instead of guide. They manage symptoms instead of addressing causes. Wellness programs and motivational talks are added on top of fundamentally unhealthy systems, creating the illusion of care without real change. People see through this quickly. When words and actions do not align, cynicism grows. Human beings are remarkably resilient when they feel safe, valued, and connected to a meaningful cause. History shows people enduring extraordinary hardship when they believe in what they are doing and trust those leading them. Burnout, therefore, is not a sign that people are weak. It is a sign that systems are asking for sacrifice without offering purpose, demanding loyalty without earning trust, and extracting energy without replenishing meaning. To address burnout, systems must be redesigned around humans, not just outputs. Leaders must take responsibility for creating environments where people can do their best work without sacrificing their health or identity. This requires clarity of purpose, consistency of values, and the courage to prioritize long-term well-being over short-term results. When people understand why their work matters and feel protected by the system they serve, energy returns, engagement deepens, and resilience becomes a natural byproduct of meaningful, well-directed effort rather than a forced response to relentless pressure. Fear is one of the fastest ways to drive behavior. It creates urgency, sharpens focus, and forces compliance. That is why fear-based leadership is so tempting, especially in high-pressure environments where results are demanded immediately and patience is scarce. When leaders rely on fear, they can push people to work longer hours, meet aggressive targets, and deliver short-term gains that look impressive on paper. But what fear produces quickly, it destroys slowly. The results come at a cost that is often invisible until it is too late. Fear-based leadership operates on control rather than trust. It assumes that people must be watched, pressured, or threatened in order to perform. Mistakes are punished instead of examined. Questions are seen as resistance rather than curiosity. In these environments, people learn quickly that survival depends on obedience, not honesty. They do what they are told, not what they believe is right. Innovation suffers because risk becomes dangerous. Creativity disappears because safety is absent. Short-term leadership focuses on immediate outcomes at the expense of long-term health. Metrics become the primary language, and anything that cannot be measured easily is dismissed as unimportant. Relationships, morale, and psychological safety are treated as secondary concerns, even though they are the foundation of sustainable performance. Leaders chase quarterly wins while ignoring the slow erosion of trust happening beneath the surface. Trust is fragile and fear breaks it quietly. When people feel threatened, they protect themselves. They withhold information, avoid accountability, and prioritize personal survival over collective success. Collaboration turns into competition. Teams fragment. People stop telling the truth upward because the cost of honesty feels too high. Leaders, sensing resistance, tighten control even further, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of fear and mistrust. The most damaging effect of fear-based leadership is the loss of humanity. People are reduced to resources, headcount, or performance units. Their emotional lives, personal struggles, and moral concerns are seen as distractions rather than realities. Over time, individuals disconnect from their own values in order to fit into the system. They learn to suppress empathy, ignore discomfort, and normalize behaviors they once would have questioned. This erosion does not happen all at once. It happens gradually through small compromises made in the name of efficiency and results. Fear can produce compliance, but it cannot produce commitment. People may do what is required, but they will not give more than necessary. They will not bring their full creativity, their discretionary effort, or their loyalty. The moment a safer or more rewarding opportunity appears, they leave. Organizations then mistake high turnover for a talent problem, rather than recognizing it as a leadership problem. Short-term leadership also creates moral shortcuts. When pressure is constant and consequences are severe, people are more likely to cut corners, hide errors, or sacrifice ethics to meet expectations. The system implicitly teaches that outcomes matter more than integrity. Over time, this corrodes the moral fabric of the organization, and by extension, the society it serves. Scandals rarely begin with malicious intent. They begin in cultures where fear makes doing the right thing feel too risky. In contrast, trust-based leadership accepts that results are important, but understands that the path to those results matters just as much. Trust allows people to speak openly, learn from failure, and support one another under pressure. It creates an environment where accountability is shared rather than imposed. Leaders who lead with trust do not need to rely on fear because people are internally motivated by a sense of belonging and purpose. Fear-based leaders often justify their approach by pointing to performance metrics, unaware that they are consuming the very foundations that sustain performance over time. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild. Humanity, once suppressed, does not return easily. The long-term costs appear in disengagement, burnout, reputational damage, and the loss of institutional memory as experienced people walk away. Results achieved through fear are brittle. They depend entirely on constant pressure and constant oversight. The moment that pressure eases, performance drops. In contrast, results built on trust and purpose are resilient. They endure through uncertainty because people choose to show up, not because they are forced to. Leadership is not revealed by how people perform when they are afraid, but by how they act when they feel safe. Short-term fear may deliver numbers, but it also teaches people that they are disposable, that their dignity is conditional, and that success requires sacrificing their humanity. And once a system teaches that lesson deeply enough, the damage extends far beyond the workplace and into the way people relate to one another in every part of their lives. Direction rooted in a clear why provides people with something far more powerful than motivation. It offers clarity. When individuals and organizations understand why they exist, decisions become simpler, trust grows naturally, and effort gains meaning. A clear why acts as a stabilizing force in times of uncertainty, giving people a reason to stay committed even when circumstances change or challenges intensify. Without this foundation, direction shifts with pressure, and confidence erodes as people struggle to understand what truly matters. Trust begins with consistency, And consistency is impossible without a clear sense of purpose. When leaders know their why, their actions align with their words. People can predict behavior because it is guided by values rather than moods or market swings. This reliability creates psychological safety. People feel protected, not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because they believe decisions will be made with integrity. Trust does not come from grand promises. It comes from repeated proof that the why will not be sacrificed for convenience. A clear why also fosters resilience. Resilience is often misunderstood as toughness or endurance, but in reality, it is the capacity to recover and adapt without losing identity. When people know why they are doing what they are doing, setbacks do not feel like personal failures. They are seen as part of a longer journey. Challenges become tests of commitment rather than reasons to quit. Direction transforms obstacles into learning moments and uncertainty into shared responsibility. Organizations without a clear why tend to fracture under pressure. When stress rises, departments protect themselves, individuals prioritize survival, and trust evaporates. In contrast, purpose-aligned organizations pull together. People are willing to support one another because they believe in the same cause. The why acts as a common language that transcends roles and hierarchies. It reminds everyone that they are part of something larger than their individual tasks. Long-term success is rarely the result of relentless pursuit of results alone. It is the outcome of sustained belief. When direction is clear, short-term sacrifices make sense because they are tied to long-term impact. Leaders can say no to opportunities that look profitable but violate their values. And people respect those decisions because they understand the reasoning behind them. Clarity of purpose creates strategic patience, allowing organizations to invest in people, relationships, and capabilities that may not pay off immediately but build lasting strength. A clear why also attracts and retains trust beyond the organization. Customers, partners, and communities respond to authenticity. They can sense when a mission is real rather than performative. When actions consistently reflect stated values, credibility grows. Trust extends outward, creating loyalty that cannot be easily disrupted by competitors or market fluctuations. This external trust reinforces internal confidence, creating a virtuous cycle of belief and performance. Resilience is strengthened when people feel seen and valued as humans, not just contributors. A purpose-driven direction acknowledges that people are not machines. It recognizes emotional, ethical, and social dimensions of work. Leaders who lead with why create environments where people feel safe to speak, to fail, and to grow. This safety allows teams to adapt quickly because they are not paralyzed by fear of blame. Learning accelerates and adaptability becomes a shared habit rather than an individual burden. Long-term success depends on continuity, and continuity depends on trust. When people trust the direction, leadership transitions, market disruptions, and technological change become manageable. The why remains constant even as strategies evolve. This continuity provides a sense of stability that allows innovation without chaos. People are willing to experiment because they know the underlying purpose will guide corrections. Direction rooted in why also restores dignity to work. It reminds people that what they do matters beyond transactions and titles. Meaningful work strengthens commitment because it aligns effort with identity. People do not simply work for rewards. They work to contribute to something they believe in. This intrinsic motivation is far more durable than incentives or pressure. Ultimately, trust, resilience, and long-term success are not separate outcomes. They are interconnected expressions of a system guided by purpose. Trust enables resilience. Resilience supports consistency, and consistency builds success over time. Direction anchored in a clear why does not eliminate difficulty or uncertainty, but it ensures that when people face those moments, they face them together, guided by a shared belief that their effort is part of a larger story worth continuing. True leadership is often misunderstood as authority, status, or control, but those are merely positions, not practices. Leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking responsibility for the lives and well-being of others. At its core, leadership is service. It begins with the recognition that power is not something to be exercised over people, but something to be used on their behalf. The moment leadership becomes centered on ego, recognition, or personal gain, it stops being leadership and becomes self-preservation. Service-based leadership requires a fundamental shift in mindset. Instead of asking, how do I get people to perform? The leader asks, how do I create the conditions for people to thrive? This shift changes everything. Decisions are no longer made solely to protect status or accelerate results, but to ensure that people feel safe, valued, and supported. When leaders serve their people, trust emerges naturally because people know they are not being used as tools for someone else's ambition. Commitment to something bigger than oneself is what gives leadership its moral compass. Without this commitment, leadership becomes reactive and transactional. Leaders chase applause, protect their image, and prioritize short-term wins that make them look successful. But when leaders are anchored to a cause beyond themselves, their choices are guided by values rather than convenience. They are willing to endure criticism, sacrifice comfort, and delay rewards because they are accountable to something more enduring than personal success. Service does not mean weakness or lack of standards. In fact, it demands greater discipline and courage. Serving people means holding them to high expectations while providing the support they need to meet those expectations. It means having difficult conversations, protecting people from harm, and making decisions that may be unpopular but necessary. Leaders who serve do not avoid responsibility. They embrace it fully, understand that their role is to carry weight so others can focus on doing meaningful work. When leadership is rooted in service, people feel seen as human beings, not resources. Their struggles are acknowledged, their contributions matter, and their voices are heard. This sense of dignity fuels loyalty and engagement far more effectively than fear or incentives. People are willing to give their best, not because they are forced to, but because they feel cared for. Commitment replaces compliance, and accountability becomes mutual rather than imposed. Leadership tied to something bigger than oneself also creates continuity. Individual leaders come and go, but a shared cause endures. This allows organizations and communities to remain stable through change. When people believe they are part of a mission that transcends any single person, they are more resilient in the face of uncertainty. They understand that their effort contributes to a longer story, one that will continue even after their individual role evolves. Service-oriented leadership reshapes how success is defined. Success is no longer measured solely by output or growth, but by the strength of relationships, the health of the culture, and the positive impact created over time. Leaders begin to ask not only whether something works, but whether it is right. This ethical dimension is essential in a world where speed and scale often outpace reflection. Commitment to something bigger provides a break against harmful shortcuts and moral compromise. Such leadership also restores trust in institutions. Many people today are skeptical of leaders because they have seen power used selfishly and irresponsibly. Service-based leadership counters this cynicism through consistent action. Trust is rebuilt slowly as people observe leaders making decisions that prioritize collective well-being over personal advantage. Over time, this consistency reestablishes belief in leadership itself. True leadership requires humility. It acknowledges that leadership is not about having all the answers, but about listening, learning, and adapting. Leaders who serve invite others into the process. They create space for diverse perspectives and shared ownership. This inclusivity strengthens decision-making and deepens commitment because people feel that the mission belongs to them, not just to those at the top. Ultimately, leadership grounded in service and purpose transforms both the leader and those they lead. It aligns power with responsibility and ambition with integrity. It creates environments where people grow, contribute, and support one another. Leadership becomes less about being remembered and more about leaving something better than it was found, a culture of trust, care, and shared responsibility that continues to serve people long after any individual leader has stepped aside. This is the moment to choose direction over distraction, service over self, and purpose over pressure. The challenges we face, burnout, fear, division, and distrust, are not signs that people have failed, but signals that our systems and leadership must evolve. When we root our actions in a clear why, we restore trust where fear once ruled, resilience where exhaustion took hold, and humanity where numbers replaced names. Leadership is not reserved for titles or positions. It belongs to anyone willing to take responsibility for others and commit to something larger than personal success. If we have the courage to lead with empathy, think long-term, and build systems that serve people rather than consume them, we do more than improve performance. We create a future where success has meaning, progress has purpose, and leadership becomes a force that uplifts everyone it touches.